Hello, and welcome to the Odyssey conference for 2022. My name is Cody Rosenblatt. I am the CTO at Katalon, and I'm here along with Armando Wershing, Director of Product Marketing at Katalon, to talk to you about DevOps and TestOps, specifically about integrating a testing platform and your DevOps tools. Before we get into our talk, I said I was from Katalon. We're not going to talk a lot about Katalon tools specifically, but many of you may be familiar with Katalon based on our Katalon Studio product that allows you to record and edit and automate testing on the web, mobile, and desktop, as well as API testing. Today, Katalon is a complete platform for software quality, including our Test Cloud, TestOps, and Katalon Runtime Engine, as well as our Katalon Recorder product. And we'll have more products coming out throughout the year. We integrate in a number of our products closely with Kobiton. You can learn more about that at our booth. But today we're really here to talk more abstractly about testing, the state of testing, and how we think you can best and most effectively integrate testing into your DevOps environment. So to set the stage a little bit, the things we're going to talk about is the current state, software development and testing, the evolution of DevOps and TestOps. We're going to talk a little bit about a number of different terms. We're going to establish a baseline for that. We're going to talk about then really as a core, what we think are some critical capabilities of a TestOps platform for you to be effective. We'll recap all of that at the end and make some closing comments. Then, of course, after this recording, Armando and I will be available live to talk, answer your questions, and we look forward to hearing from you. So to set a little bit of the context for our discussion, I just want to talk briefly about the demand on current software delivery organizations and how testing fits into that and the constraints and the opportunities for getting around those constraints that I think are worth talking about. First of all, I think we all know there is increasing demand for software globally, and it's not just in companies that have historically been thought of as technology companies. It's in transportation, it's in healthcare, it's in financial services, it's in food delivery. Everything is being increasingly automated and driven by software systems. It was about a decade ago, I think, that Mark Andreessen said that software is eating the world, and that's not slowing down. If anything, it's speeding up. We're seeing increasingly the case that no longer is a system just a web application or just a mobile application. Any really modern software is increasingly deployed in multiple modalities on the web, on mobile devices, potentially on your connected watch, in the probably not too distant future on augmented or extended reality devices like glasses that are probably a year or two out from deployment, already on voice devices like Alexa and Siri. All of that means there is even greater need for testing across all these different modalities, not just to see how they work on their own, but how they work together. A manual workforce can't keep up with that. Automation is critical, but automation on its own isn't enough because there's always more to do. And we want to talk today about how we can do that work more intelligently and how integrating testing into your software, CI/CD, DevOps environment via a TestOps platform can be a better solution for you. And just in case it isn't obvious, all of those bottlenecks have real implications in terms of lost business opportunities, constraints on scalability. So these are real business critical questions. And I think we all know that. So before we really get into talking about the capabilities that we think are critical in a TestOps system, I just want to spend a little bit of time sort of reviewing history and reviewing some terms that we often use. And we're going to start out by talking about Agile. And I think a lot of people here probably don't remember this, but before Agile, there was waterfall. And that was in a time when software was delivered on much longer cycles, where maybe we delivered every month or every quarter, maybe even once a year. And delivery took actual deployment of CDs or tapes, if anyone remembers these things, to customers. And we had the time to, do extensive upfront planning and deployment. But even then, we knew that, or we realized that we couldn't deliver it as quickly as we wanted to, and we weren't delivering with all the quality we wanted to. And a group of individuals put together an Agile manifesto that made the case that we really needed to focus less on extensive upfront planning and careful movement from design to development to test, and more on interactions between people and processes, and caring about that more than tools, and caring about working software more than we did about documentation of old systems. And we really needed to focus on collaboration and responding to changes. All of those things are more critical now than ever. And they really led to the development of a movement that we all refer to as DevOps. And now there's no DevOps manifesto, but nevertheless, DevOps was definitely a response to Agile and related methodologies, putting increased pressure on teams to deliver value to production quickly. And much like Agile realized here, there weren't these bright lines between design and development and deployment. DevOps realized that there aren't these bright lines between all the forms of development and deployment, that we needed to bring what we thought of as development and operations together to be symbiotic in their interactions, to work cross-functionally across teams, to work more to automate not just the core development activities, but really the whole pipeline, from really even requirements gathering to engineering and development to deployment to production to monitoring production. Coming out of DevOps, we have the notion of continuous testing. And here I want to draw out the distinction between continuous testing and simple test automation. Test automation is part of continuous testing, but continuous testing gets us out of the idea that testing is a distinct stage in software development, something that occurs after software is developed and then before it's delivered. And instead, continuous testing focuses on testing throughout the life cycle, from shifting left, in which development testing happens during the development process, to shifting right, in which testing is happening in production and feeding back into the requirements and development process. And that brings us finally around to TestOps. And for our purposes, we're using TestOps here to describe a set of capabilities that are specific to testing in a DevOps environment. These include, but aren't limited to, automated testing, unit testing, acceptance testing, performance testing, security, automated provisioning and deployment of test environments, collection, storage, and analysis of test results, and broadly, integration of testing with a whole host of other components of a development environment: version control systems, requirements management tools, collaboration tools, production monitoring and observability tools. And today, what we want to talk about is the importance of building on top of a TestOps platform rather than plugging all of these distinct integrations into an existing DevOps pipeline, and how that can reduce complexity and improve performance. So given our premise that you ought to be integrating a TestOps platform into your DevOps pipeline rather than directly integrating more tools, let's now shift to discussing the capabilities that we think should be part of such a platform. At Katalon, we believe that QA teams need a platform that focuses on their unique needs, but also integrates seamlessly into existing Agile and DevOps processes. QA teams have slightly different requirements in their process flows that go beyond simply automating tests, as well as different needs with respect to reporting and insights based on the roles within the organization. Platforms that are open and integrated also empower collaboration and the breaking down of silos, enabling powerful capabilities such as self-service functionality. With all these desired capabilities, it's not hard to see why a testing tool just isn't enough to deliver on continuous quality. Which brings us to the question, so what capabilities should such a platform have? It may seem obvious, but we think that a critical capability of a TestOps platform is, of course, to create tests, to allow for authoring and automation of tests. And in terms of authoring, we would go further to say that you want to have an authoring platform that enables testers moving from a manual testing experience to transition into automation. Oftentimes that can be accomplished by supporting recording, which is a process very similar to manual testing, and one that can give a tester who's new to automation a way to bootstrap their way into a low-code environment. That low-code environment, in turn, needs to be flexible enough to allow for automation, looping, conditionals, etc., that do allow for broadening a test to more than what was simply recorded. And the execution, the automation of those test scripts, once they're created, needs to be robust. The tool needs to generate tests that are able to identify elements of the user interface flexibly and accommodate changes to those user interface elements when they happen, and if needed, engage the tester in a human in the loop decision about what is a new element in the system and how to identify it if it can't be identified through AI or other heuristics. Given the capability to author tests, any sufficiently complex system will over time develop a library of tests to execute across the application and at different layers in the architecture. And as noted at the beginning of this talk, all of these automated tests, even when they're fully automated, can become a bottleneck of their own without the ability to orchestrate and optimize test execution. In terms of orchestration, the kinds of things we're talking about is the ability to take a library of tests and organize and structure it in ways that are focused on particular functions. So maybe you have a test suite that is testing your API layer and a separate test suite that is testing your user interface layer on through. Maybe you have a test suite that executes some core set of business functions that the system is simply unable to be used without. And then you have a broader test suite that exercises the system across a wider span of functions. Test orchestration also requires the ability to define and acquire the necessary environments for executing given test suites. A TestOps platform that provides the necessary orchestration facilities will give you the ability to provision your own systems with the right operating system, so device accesses, browser accesses that are needed to exercise your application under test in the ways you expect it to be used in the real world. Going beyond the test orchestration that we described, the process of organizing tests into test suites, maybe even dynamic test suites that are based on known features of a set of tests. Optimization goes even deeper into the system under test and your test suite to determine what is the optimal set of tests to maximize your test coverage, or you can also think of it as minimizing your risk when you deploy. So the things we're talking about here are systems that can look upstream, for example, at changes in the system under test in its source code and use correlations that are discovered over the execution of tests over time to determine what set of tests is best matched and will best cover the changes that are known to be happening in a given application release. This is the kind of intelligent execution that can really, if not, widen that bottleneck that we talked about at the beginning of this discussion. As important as the creation of tests, the execution of tests, the orchestration and optimization of those executions is the ability to derive insight from test executions, success, failure, performance variations, security issues. All of those test results are able to provide insight. And it's important that your TestOps platform be able to capture those and deliver them back to your team for insights. When delivering insights, it will be important that your TestOps system be able to deliver insights that are appropriate to people operating in different roles within your quality organization, or even within the broader engineering and product organizations. You may have test engineers who want to see the results, very detailed results of a specific test run. They may also want to be able to look across test runs for common failures. Similarly, a test manager who has a team of testers may want to look for those commonalities, but may also want to look at how his team is performing overall and how it is using the test environments that it has allocated to it, and maybe what other resources in terms of test environments or test automation capacity it needs. You may have a engineering delivery manager who wants to see the performance of the code that they just shipped and wants to be able to look, at a high level there. And there's just a whole host of different perspectives that you want to be sure can be met within your TestOps platform. As you're considering the insights capabilities of a TestOps platform, you'll want to keep in mind that you want more than just reporting. You want a system that can, collect all the data, consolidate it, give you reports. But as we move into an increasingly AI and machine learning driven era, you want to have a system that can also apply those new tools to extracting its own insights from the data that you're collecting. A system that can apply machine learning to find patterns of failures or find patterns of flakiness in your test performance, which has been the bane of testing for probably as long as any of us have been doing it. And now we have systems that can really process data at high volumes and yet still derive meaning from an important consideration. Finally, a capability that can be overlooked when considering a TestOps platform, because it's not really a technical capability, is the capability to be connected to community. In a time when technology is rapidly evolving, it's important to be able to connect to other people and organizations who are working alongside you and your organization on similar technologies with similar problems. And to that extent, there's both formal and informal communities. Formal communities include things like commercial support channels and support forums that are maintained by companies. But arguably just as important are informal channels, things like Reddit, Stack Overflow, YouTube, places where people are answering questions, providing learning, providing tutorials because of their interest in the domain and the tools and the platform involved. And it's important to find a platform that has the breadth and the adoption that will give you access to both those formal and informal communities. As important as all the capabilities that I've already listed are, and there are more, that was not a comprehensive list. Certainly the most critical capability for a TestOps platform is the ability to integrate with lifecycle management requirements, systems like Jira or Qtest or TestRail and many others, to integrate with collaboration systems like the increasingly ubiquitous Slack, almost as ubiquitous Teams, GitHub, and other developer-oriented systems where people can collaborate around code and other artifacts. Jenkins, and of course your various CI/CD systems, and of course cloud execution engines like Kobiton, and also Browser Stack and Sauce Labs and others. And again, this list of integrations is not comprehensive, but it does, I hope, point to the need to think about your TestOps platform as a place for integrating once to a lot of different technologies that are core to success in a testing and quality enterprise. So those are some of the capabilities that we think are important to find in a TestOps platform, and why we think that it's important to integrate those capabilities into your DevOps environment via a platform, so that you're not faced with integrating each of those into your DevOps pipeline individually and separately, and not being able to have them work together effectively without considerable effort. So to recap, we talked about the current state of software development, the fact that there is increasing demand across industries for software, that there is increasing need for faster delivery because of competition, and that there's increasing need for automation to match the pace of delivery. But even in the face of automation, bottlenecks still exist, and we need to be able to operate smarter and more efficiently. We talked about the evolution of DevOps and TestOps, starting with the emergence of Agile, the development of DevOps to support the increased demands for delivery within an Agile environment, the development of continuous testing to support DevOps. And finally, we talked about TestOps as a way to integrate continuous testing in its fullest fashion into the DevOps environment, the DevOps practice. We talked about the capabilities of a TestOps platform, including authoring and automation for creating tests and effectively and robustly executing them. We talked about orchestration and optimization for structuring your test suites, organizing those test suites for effective execution, optimizing those test suites based on observations about execution and the relationship between the application under test and the tests themselves. We talked about the need for a platform to gather data from test execution and deliver insights from that data. Insights in the form of standard reporting, but also reporting that's augmented by artificial intelligence and machine learning to derive meaning from large volumes of test data. And we talked about the importance of community as a feature of a TestOps platform, so that you can take advantage of other people and organizations who are working with the same technologies and the same problems that you are. And finally, we discussed the fact that really all of that is about integration, and you need a platform for TestOps that can integrate all these capabilities and capabilities from external sources, external applications, other tools, and do that in a way that can be managed autonomously by your testing teams. And just in closing, I'll say that we at Katalon believe that our TestOps platform provides many of these capabilities, and certainly provides the platform for integration across the testing environment so that you can deliver software with high quality, because quality matters. We'd love to talk to you. Please come see us at our booth. You can find us on the internet, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us lots of places, and certainly in the communities that we talked about. Thanks a lot. Stay safe. I enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you live after this.